Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's the Sunday night webinar. Hey, it's May 20th, and boy, things are coming to an end quickly. This is the last scheduled Sunday night webinar of the year, and I'm Gene Clabago.
And I'm Roger Carroll.
And with us tonight, we have Judy Glasser, who is the Community Relations Director, which means about 15 or 20 different hats, I think, right, Judy?
It feels like that, yeah.
Yeah, who's going to be with us and deals, well, I guess mainly with website, the new website, ADA issues, and some other things. And certainly, if you do have any questions or concerns, send them along to us. Many of you know that in the little control panel you have over there, there is a place where you can send us comments and questions. Please send them along and we'll pass them to Judy and she can answer them. And with that, now what I'm going to do, Judy, is are you ready for me to give you the screen?
I am.
Oh, you should. I see it waiting for you to say yes, and I see, oh my golly.
That's my buddy Max the dog.
I went out with her once. No, that was terrible. I apologize.
You should be so lucky, Gene. He's a wonderful, wonderful cat.
That was good. Okay, and with that, I'm going to shut up.
Okay, well, I really want to thank you, Gene and Roger, for inviting me. You had invited me some time ago, but I really wanted to wait until we had some of this ADA under control so that I could share something that hopefully will be helpful to a lot of people. So, and thank you to everybody who took an hour out of their Sunday evening to listen to this. I do appreciate that because this has been a big undertaking. So what I thought I would do is start out with just talking about the new website and ADA compliance, probably for the majority of our time together, and then just a little bit about my number one probably thing I get questions about other than the website, which is pictures, sending me pictures. And then I really want to ask people's input on something before we are done. So let me decide which tab it's not that one. I have some tabs open here. Okay, so you all, I think, have seen the new website, which we launched, maybe, I don't know, a few months ago. It feels like years, but I know it hasn't been that long. So when that happened, we pulled everybody's access to edit the website. And the reason we did that was because we and every other school district in the state are now required to be compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is a little bit of a, well, it's a big thing to get your head around, because what this means is that we have to be compliant with every imaginable kind of disability. So if someone is blind or colorblind or has learning disabilities or is motor impaired or has hearing loss, pretty much anything you can think of, everything that we have on our website has to be accessible to them. Now, I had originally done a little PowerPoint, which I'm not going to probably use a whole lot of, but this kind of sums it up. Everything has to be compliant. So fonts, colors, tables, which are a special nightmare, PDFs, links, Word documents, everything. And here's the kicker. It has to be compliant for everyone, even if it's only intended for students, and even if none of your students have any of these issues and none of their parents do either, it doesn't matter. It still has to be compliant. That's the law. So I've heard two schools of thought about this. One is, this is great. This is about equality and equal access, and it's wonderful. The other is, my God, this is a big time killer. And if nobody that's going to be using my information is affected by this, why should I have to do it? My own personal opinion is it's the law. It doesn't really matter. You know, you pay your taxes, you do what you have to do. So I thought I'd take you a little bit through how to make things compliant. How does that sound? So I am behind, as most of you who are site managers, and I'm just guessing that many of you who took the time to be with me tonight probably are site managers of some capacity. You're managing your school site or a sports site or something. So I wanted to just, first of all, if you've not been behind as a manager yet, been behind the scenes, since we switched the website, the environment looks a little bit different than it looked previously. So let's have a look. I'm going to go to public relations and just give you an idea of what you can expect if you haven't been there yet. So this is the new environment that you're working in. All of these apps have been made to be compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I want to just, before I get too deep in the weeds, I want to note that the Office of Civil Rights is investigating districts all over the place who are not compliant. People really are out there looking for districts that are not compliant, and then those districts get fined, and you have to go through this whole process. So they are monitoring it, and they are backing it up. So just, keep that in the back of your mind. So it has been made easier in the sense that you can now just take these things that you want and just drag them into your environment, and then you'll be able to use them. But let's go in. You can see when you go in, this is a content app, is what I've used for my homepage. And we have this little green editor guy here. And when you click that, you go into an environment. The main thing about entering text just on a regular page, and we're just going to talk about the text now. In fact, let me just back up because I actually created a little webinar page here that I could go into and kind of show you. So here's some plain text that I've entered in for tonight. Now, because one of the main user groups that would be affected by ADA are people who have vision impairment, our pages have to be made to be friendly with optical screen readers. Somewhere here, I did pull up a little, no, it's not there. Let me just have a quick peek. This was just given to me. Fortuitously enough, I was just at yet another BOCES training about ADA compliance, and they gave us this JAWS Keyboard Command Quick Reference Guide. JAWS is one of the optical reader programs that a lot of people with visual impairments or motor impairments might be using. So when you look at this, you'll see, boy, it's not an easy thing, is it, to try to use a website when you don't have all the functionality of your own body that most of us are blessed to have. So these people are using the keyboard. They need to be able to tab through your page. They need to have their optical reader be able to read them, the page. In order for that to work, we need to encode our web pages with information that the optical readers can easily understand. They're looking for certain things. So one of the things they're looking for is they're looking for titles, they're looking for headings, they're looking for information to be clearly organized and able to be picked up and interpreted by that machine and then interpreted, read to the end user. So if we are not using our style sheets and giving it the information in the way that it needs, it becomes really problematic for people to use the information. So Webs That Work, or now they've changed it, it's a Blackboard product in any event. They have encoded these things for us, and maybe I'll get a chance to show you, or maybe you'll have a chance to see at some point later. Word and the whole Microsoft Office suite has actually done this as well, but one thing at a time. So the first thing we need is we need a title on every page, because that's the first thing the screen reader is going to look for. So if you go to your capital T, you'll see that one of your options is title. You can see that it changes the font, it changes the size. It's important to note that when you look at this font, it's a sans serif font. It's either Verdana or something like that. It's sans serif. That is easier for the screen reader to use. As you go through your regular text, you're going to want to identify everything as kind of what it is. Is it a title? Is it a heading? Is it just text? You have to go through all of that again so the screen reader understands it. It's also important to remember you have to kind of think like that person. If you're asking people to answer all the questions in red, that doesn't help people who can't see red, either because they can't see at all or because they have severe color blindness, things like that. So you really want to use these sheets. Usually we've been kind of used to drawing attention and drawing emphasis on certain things by making them bold or making them italic or underlining them. The optical screen readers don't pick up on that, so it doesn't help anybody. So kind of just stay away from that, because although it's kind of how we've been trained, it doesn't really help anymore. So that's the first thing. Now, we're going to be talking about, and I forget what this stands for, WCAG. It's Content Accessibility Guidelines, I think it is, website. This is a handy site, and I will leave this page up under Public Relations for a while if anybody wants to bookmark some of these. But this gives you a lot of information about ADA and how to make things compliant. So this is just basic text, right? So we can go over here and we can click small, or we can click normal and make it the size that we want, and all of that is fine. One of the things that a screen reader might look for, it's going to look for headings, just like you or I would jump around on a page. Kind of when you're looking at a textbook, you're looking for specific information. We kind of have to set it up that way. So let's say that we will discuss, let's say we're going to make that a heading. We have to use our headings in a nominal order that makes sense. So maybe this is a subtitle, and then we might go to heading 3 and then heading 4. You just go in numerical order. When you have a laundry list like this, like I have here, you want to make them either bulleted or numbered. When it does not matter, if you have a list and it doesn't really matter what order people do them in, then you use bullets. If it does matter, if it's a recipe, for example, or instructions for a science experiment or something like that, then the order might matter, then you would use your numbers, of course. But here it doesn't so much matter. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to pick a bullet. And then we have our links. Now, you know that our, whoops, well, I didn't mean to do that. Our links are going to be put in the same way they always were. Here's our insert link. We go to that, we put it in, all of that is fine. When you right click it and you click link, you see this title? That is the place for alternative text. Every image and every link has to have alternative text. Why you have to have alternative text on a link? If you have a link that says, click here to, I don't know, see the sunrise or whatever, why do you have to have an alternative text to that? I don't know, but you do. So this is where you would put that alternative text in. You might say, whatever it is, link to Winnie Rick guidelines, whatever it might be. It's also important that you're conscious of target. Is this person opening the information in a new window, being a new tab, or are they opening it in the same window? Now, that's just important so that when someone's using a screen reader, they have some idea whether or not they have left your site. Because if they want to go back or, you know, whatever, they need to know how to navigate that. So that is the first basic thing that we need to know. We also have to look at the readability level of the content. So those of you who are teachers are going to be very familiar with this. You know that whether you're doing PR, we used to call it a gunning fog index. I don't know what teachers call it, if they call it just a reading level of whatever variety. You don't want it to be too chunky for people with disabilities to easily understand it. So if you have a lot of 25-cent words or a lot of long sentences or a lot of passive voice, all those things, you have to kind of be careful of that because it may not be easily understood by people with learning disabilities. You want to keep your formatting simple. If you're bringing something in, and this is something a lot of people might have an issue with. Let's say you have a Word document and you want to bring it into to your website. You can make it accessible in Word, but Word accessibility and web accessibility are kind of two different animals. So you would either want to post a link to your ADA accessible Word document or paste it as plain text in your Word document and then make it ADA accessible. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if it makes sense to maybe Gina or Roger could tell me if what I'm saying is kind of clear. But if you bring something in and the formatting has carried in, even though you've tried to paste it as plain text, you can go up here to this icon, looks like a T or an I maybe with a little X. It's clear formatting. So you can highlight whatever it might be that you want to strip the formatting out of and click that. Now, because it's the web and because life is imperfect, you may have to click it more than once. Some text, depending on whence you're carrying it in from, it might hang on to some of that formatting, even though you're asking it to clear. You just have to keep asking it to clear, like asking a kid to do something. You just keep asking. Sooner or later, hopefully, they will actually do it. So let's see, we've gone through this. You do, as I mentioned, we do have to, and you can see that you got the alternative text there. Same thing with an image. If you're bringing in an image, it also has to have alternative text. The way that I would do that, and you know, I guess like so many things on the web, there are multiple ways to do it. If you're bringing in an image, what I do is I go to Tools, I go to Files and Folders, I go to Upload, I go to Select File. I don't know if I have any pictures that I want to share with you on my computer. Let's just, here's one. We'll upload that image. It will, let's see, that was called Table 2, right? We're going to go over here. I know this is a lot to remember. So again, if you get stuck or you need help, I want to make it very clear. You can call me. I will tell you, or I will come and sit at your desk and walk you through it. I know that some of these things are multiple steps and a little confusing. So please don't panic if this looks like a lot to remember. But for those of you who are kind of familiar with what I'm doing here, you're going to click Get Link. You're going to highlight it and copy it. And then you can clear right on out of that. Go back to Summary. Go back to your page. Go back to Edit. And wherever you're going to put that picture, you can right-click it. Click Image. These are the important ones. Source, that's what we copied and pasted. That's your link. Image description, table. Image title is really what's going to show up as your alternative text. Now, it can be very tempting when you're doing this and you're in a hurry, and we're all always in a hurry. I totally understand that. We're all doing a lot of things. It can be very tempting to throw in a one-word, table. But if you are blind, that may not be enough information. You may really not be being fair to the person trying to use your site. So what you want to do is you want to say, what image of walnut table, something that's descriptive, and click it in. If only I had resized it, this would be perfect. I didn't, that's okay. So we'll go back to image and we'll change our size down here. I'm assuming this is a question, this little thing blinking.
Yes.
Where do I see this question? If you have a question or comment. Oh, my Niagara Woods and Words is, sorry about that, out of, okay. So now, there we are. There's our image. When it, and isn't that lovely? Yes, that is a handmade table. That will show up with the alternative text, image of walnut table. So try to make it actually mean something. Now, am I missing a question here, Roger?
No, we're fine. I just checked.
Okay.
I don't know where that came from.
Okay, just wanted to check that. I don't know how to make this. There we go. I bet I go over there. Okay. So, again, it's just very important that your images and your links really are descriptive. If you have something that's just decorative and you really don't need people to, you really don't need it read to somebody, maybe you've got a little star or, you know, a little A+ icon or something, and you really feel like it's not terribly important for a blind person or somebody who's impaired in some way to be able to get that image, you can just, where you put in your alternative text, put double quotes. So where it said alternative text, you'd put quote, quote, and it will know that, okay, that's a decorative object. I don't have to read that. So that's one way to get around that, which is, you know, kind of simple enough. Okay, those are the basics of that. Now, the other thing, though, that becomes problematic is, well, there's a few things really, but a couple that I want to mention. One is tables, 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 tables. You science people and your tables. There's a table icon over here. Drag it and drop it and use that. That's going to automatically be ADA compliant. You're going to pick your size and all of that. You have to have labels. Now, here's the thing I've learned just yesterday. You have to have, even if you have your header row and your column row and you've given everything labels so that somebody knows going across what they're looking at, coming down what they're looking at, still underneath your table, you have to have a narrative that explains what your table is saying. So you have to do both. Tables are cumbersome. If you need to use them, use this app. But if you don't need to use them, do not give yourself the headache of doing so, is my best advice to you, truthfully, because they can be problematic. Same thing, I know Jan and I were talking before we came online here about videos. Videos have to be closed captioned. You can do that through YouTube. Probably first question will be, well, those OSC videos aren't closed captioned. And my answer to you is we're going to have to work on that, because technically everything we link to is also supposed to be accessible. So that means things like Facebook and Twitter and even the OSC. So how we're going to accomplish all of that, to be truthful, Diane Spicone and I have been working on this assiduously and painfully for many months. We tried to get everything as ADA compliant as we can before switching over to the new website, so that at least everybody was starting out in a kind of a good place. But to be honest with you, for people who have, for teachers who have teacher pages or you know, people who update their content frequently, it's going to be an ongoing daily concern for you, no matter what we do. Because if you're uploading the information, it's kind of on the person uploading. But we're responsible as a district, so we have to really make our very best effort at doing this. So a couple of places that are handy. This is a place you can see, wave.webaim.org, and I'll be happy to send you these links. You can drop a web address in here, and it will kind of tell you whether or not you're ADA compliant and where your problems are. Now, sadly, some of our, there are still some issues that they're working out in the template. Like, of course, we get notices, all these things, you know, they're questioning. Well, those are built into the template, and we can't always solve all of them. We take them up with BOCES or what have you. But you can see here it's questioning this PDF. PDFs are an animal unto themselves. So a PDF, Diane and I have the ability to make them compliant. PDFs have to be tagged. When I get a PDF, we have to open it in, we're using Acrobat DC, which many of you will not have as an automatic piece of software from a school district. To give everybody that probably would be an expense. I'm not sure, again, exactly how we're going to handle that. But in the meantime, if you have a PDF and you email it to either Diane Spicone or myself, we are happy to make it compliant for you. But just to be aware, what we have to do is tag it, establish the reading order, put alternative text into every image that they're maybe included in that, and then resave it as an ADA compliant item and repost it. So, you know, it's like anything else. It's a bit more work. It's something we're not used to, but I'm sure a year from now, it'll just be another day. It's just how you do business. So that's okay.
Judy, I have a question.
Sure.
A couple times you've mentioned you have to tag it. Could you explain what that means?
I wish I could. What I know is this. It's telling the reader how to read it, the order to read, what it's reading. I don't have the best answer in the world, the best definition in the world about tagging. I know that it's helping the reader to read through the document in a logical and sequential way. And I will freely admit that I am learning this about 30 seconds ahead of sharing it with everyone else. So, I mean, we've been working on this for several months, but it is something that I don't really have firsthand knowledge of, do I? I don't use an optical reader. So this is, I'm getting the state's giving the information to BOCES, who's packaging it up and teaching it to all of us, and we're turnkeying it to all of you. So there will be issues that that I'll have to research and say, let me get back to you on this or that. So if that's something that happens, or somebody has a question that I don't have an answer to, that's perfectly okay, but I will find the answer.
So I'm wondering also out loud here about PDFs. Now, where do they typically appear, say on a school or a teacher web page?
Oh, golly, they appear, let's see. Well, my newsletter would be one. That's something in a lot of school newsletters would be a site as well. So, and I don't even have a lot of I used to have a whole bank of newsletters. When you clicked on the Our Schools or the Your Public Schools newsletter, you would go to a whole archived bank of them. Now you're going to get the most current issue, simply because that document in particular is 8 pages long and it takes a long time. It's not, DC Reader does help you make the document accessible, but it's more of a souffle than an easy bake oven. You know, it's not a perfect science. So it takes a little bit of time to really get it compliant. be a tad frustrating. So what I'm doing and what I've noticed many other school districts are doing is they're kind of deciding what really needs to be posted. We want to be as full and complete as we can, but first and foremost, we have to be compliant. So if we don't need 6 years of newsletters on the site, then maybe we don't post 6 years of school newsletters or district newsletters. Maybe we just post the pertinent information. UPK applications, magnet school applications, those tend to be PDFs as well. Does that kind of?
And what makes a PDF compliant or not compliant? That the JAWS can't read it, or the?
Correct. Correct. You have to make it so that JAWS or whatever other brand name of software someone's using can read it. So when I have a PDF, and I would show you this, but I don't have DC Reader on my home computer, so I can't show you the physical demonstration, but you have to strip out the reading order. The PDF kind of assigns it what it thinks is a reading order. So if you can imagine, your typical newsletter might have text on 3/4 of the page to the left, and then it might have a little box to the right, a little shaded column box that has the board members' names or teachers' names or phone numbers or what have you. Well, the optical reader is going to read like a human, left to right. So instead of reading the story and then skipping and reading that shaded column, it's going to read across. So you have to kind of tell it, you have to re-instruct the PDF that, no, this is one story, and again, you have to tell it, this is the title, this is the story, this is number 1. And number 2, here's the title, here's the story, so go here, go there. You're telling the optical reader where to go and what to read in what order. Does that make some sense?
Okay, well, like when I'm just relating that back to when you're formatting your page in the editor tool.
Yeah.
And you're using header, subtitle, etc.
Right.
When the optical reader hits that, it says title, and then what the title is, or subtitle.
I don't think it specifically speaks title, but I think it just knows that it's reading a title. So instead of reading like what I'm looking at now, instead of reading Niagara Falls City School District, District Home Select School, Translate, Learning for All, whatever it takes, you're telling it to read Niagara Falls City School District, Learning for All, whatever it takes, school district logo, open book inside a diamond shape, options, district home, select a school, translate.
So it would say options. Like it would have to know that those are navigation channels or choices. If it says option home, option hour, just something like that.
I'm assuming that it does, and it is an assumption on my part because you'd be labeling these as 3 different areas.
Right.
But I don't know that. I have never used one. And I think the most wonderful thing in the world would be to be able, if everybody could sit with one for an hour, right, and really get the experience, well, we'd all be rich, wouldn't we? We'd all understand completely.
Well, I think that I'm just thinking ahead to like, where we go forward with this and working with teachers and staff and so on, that it might be a worthwhile experience to view a page as it would be, and say viewed, experience a page as a sightless person with a reader. And what that experience is might make composition stronger for that.
Absolutely. Oh, it'd be wonderful. And I know there is a function on Word, and I think if you log into Word through your Office 365, I think that version has the, at least the ability with Word, you can make it accessible and then you can ask it to read it to you. And you will hear what that person would hear.
That's what I want to go back and look at. I know like on Edge, there are some new accessibility tools there. and so on. Is that actually simulating what the JAWS or the DC Reader would do?
Well, I believe that it is if your disability happens to be visual. Now, if your disability is motor, I mean, there are people who put a, you know, when I went to school, this is how old I am. Who remembers the pointer, right? Where the teacher had a pointer to point at the green chalkboard. They have a version of that basically that they hold in their teeth and use it to navigate a touch screen. There are other people who use the tab key or commands on their keyboard. So I mean, it really is kind of, you know, you really are trying to be all things to all people, but that's what we have to do. That's the mission.
Yeah, basically our conversation's been about visually impaired experiences.
Right, which would be 90% of them, yeah. But yes, and correct. But that's, I think, where your tagging comes in as well. I think that your tagging comes in to help people tab through. And tabbing can be, that's one of the main reasons we really, I want to make this really clear, use the apps provided because they're tabbable. So you can imagine calendars, for example. Please, we spent a lot of money on this website and a lot of money on the training. Use your provided calendar right here. Don't use a Google Calendar. Don't throw in something else because they may or may not be compliant. Also because this calendar app is what populates this down here. So schools, I know a couple of schools initially were using the Google Calendar because it's cool. But when you do that, this is not populated. And that's a problem because now you have a great big hole on your website. So
now
we really
that
want you
calendar, just as an aside here, question about that calendar that you're pointing to, that's the calendar that you control at the district level.
Well, yes and no, because here's the thing. So before we switch to this website, I would populate district-wide events at the district level and push them down to everybody else's calendar. Now, because of the app, which is another whole bucket of fish that we haven't even touched on, when I do that, the app, depending on, well, there's my account again, it will actually show up on our app twice. So I am backing off from putting a lot of things on the district calendar and pushing them down. I'm going to put them on my calendar, but I'm not going to push them down. It's going to be up to the schools to populate those things, because if I'm following Maple Avenue School, let's say, I will get 2 notifications on my app that say that on June 7th, the Board of Ed is having a review session, because it will show it to me once as a district follower and once as a Maple Avenue School follower. Now I follow all the schools, so that means I would be seeing this 14 times.
Oh, geez.
So that's not helpful.
Right.
It's not helpful.
Yeah. Really.
So we really want to ask people to use that. The other thing that's most likely to come up, I think, is colorblind people, color contrast. It is not intuitive. Things that you would think are okay for colorblind people are not always, that's not always the case. And there is an accessibility checker for that as well, which I can, you know, I'd be happy to share with people. I'm not sure. I think it's, again, on the WebAIM color contrast checker. You can go right there. You can drop your URL into it, and it will tell you. When we were putting this together and we wanted each school to have their school colors, some of them we just had to say, I'm sorry, you can have close to your school colors, but you can't have your actual school colors because they're not compliant. Your school colors are not compliant. I'm sorry. So it's been an interesting and kind of a long slog. Now, some things, in the interest of time and just, you know, we're trying to address the things that will affect the majority of people the most, we've tried to address those first. So is everything completely compliant right now? It is not. It is not. We're working on it, and we get, in some happy day, I know Diane and I are looking forward to some happy day when every school manager or everyone who is managing any portion of the website will get their own access to something called Site Improve, which is not my friend. It is and it's not. So every few days, Diane and I each get an email, which is a Site Improve report. And what Site Improve does is it gives us a report of everything that's wrong with our website. Our website is about 11,000 pages. We get a report that says every misspelling, every broken link, everything that's too old, certain number of years old, everything that is not ADA compliant. And she and I each devote a portion of our week to going through each and every one of these and trying to find out what the problem is and fix it. And as you can see, there are 104 pages. So we have 2,070 items that we're trying to contend with. So we still work. We started out with like 6,000, so we're doing great. But our goal is that someday Maple Avenue School will get their own Site Improve report, and that person will say, oh, look, I'll have 5 things to fix. You know, we can't turn that over until it's manageable, and fully we recognize that we cannot dump this amount of, you know, problems on anybody. I mean, people would be crying. So, and sometimes we cry too, but we're trying to kind of make that as accessible and kind of have it as much in hand as we can before we do that. But we do look to the day when someday everybody will.
Someday.
Someday. I'm sure there's a Broadway song around that. There must be. There must be. So, I mean, those are the basics of ADA compliance. Again, what the main thing I want to really convey to people, please don't feel badly. If you have to call and ask me the same thing for the 6th time, I am perfectly fine with that. Do not feel in any way embarrassed or, you know, that you're a pain or anything. You really and truly are not, because everybody who's trying to do this the right way is making my job easier. So I appreciate that, and I will come and sit right at your desk and help you or find any answer that I don't happen to have. I'm more than happy to do that.
Judy?
I know at the beginning of the year, when at the beginning of the school year, when we kind of divorced ourselves from the New York Learns tool for providing teacher web pages and information. So those links were deleted or the pages made inaccessible, and the teacher or got a message saying to contact you.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I think you probably blew up a few email boxes with that.
No.
At the time, and Jean and I were filtering questions as well, because we'd worked with a number of the teachers.
Sure.
Explaining that you are, say, you know, the buck stops at your desk or your phone for questions and concerns of this nature in the district. I guess my real question is, there is no policy, no statement that teachers have or not have a classroom web page.
Correct.
So, and we know the vast majority of them probably do not. We had you know, a number of people wanting to take advantage of it and so on. And I wonder, at the discussion stage, I think Jean and I see the value.
Oh, absolutely.
That kind of communication going on. So what I'm getting at, a question is, what would be the least amount of information, manageable information, that we would recommend teachers have on their class web page that they can be linked to directly from that teacher web page's channel?
Well, I think I'm in a unique position to answer that because I am not and never have been a teacher. So I can tell you as a parent, which I think is the most important, right? We have to remember that our website is primarily a vehicle for students and parents first and foremost. We can get, sometimes it can be easy, I think, to forget that and to try to make it very, everybody wants their stuff on the home page because it's really important to them. And I understand that and I appreciate the enthusiasm, but we have to remember we're here for parents and students first. So as a parent, what would I want to see? I would want to see, hey, what's the best way to get a hold of you, number one? How do I leave you a voicemail? How do I email you? That's the first thing that I want to know. The second thing I want to know is what's going on in the class? What's my kid responsible for? What do I need to nag my son to do? So I'd want to see assignments. I would want to see, but these can be mostly text with links to, here's the lesson. Here's what we're working on this week. It can be a link. And you know what? You can download that and print it out or talk about it over dinner or whatever you want to do. I would keep it fairly simple, but keep it compliant. I mean, you can get as fancy as you want as long as it's compliant.
Well, I think that's kind of what I figured. What is the least amount of information, the basic information that might save a parent calling the school, being put through, ending up on voicemail, and a teacher finding time to respond to it, maybe not, immediately, but if it's out there that, say at the beginning of the school year, that parents know that you can find this basic information on my classroom webpage.
Oh, if I were a teacher, I think I would. I mean, I know that teachers, if I understand the process correctly, you pretty much know in August, you know what you're teaching in every quarter, every week. It's already laid out there, right? You have a syllabus, basically. Right. Learning standards that you have to hit. So I would post that. And I would post, to me, when you go to college and the professor hands you your syllabus at the beginning of the semester and says, these are the dates that things are due. These are the assignments that are due. This is what we're going to learn. These are the reading materials. As a parent, that's what I would want to see. What's due when? What are you talking about? And certainly I would want to know what is the best way to contact you so that I can get communication. Because, a lot of parents may not be online or they may not be available 8 to 4, or whatever it is. We know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree completely. And I know teachers, that's the, let's say, baseline for communication. A lot of teachers manage much of their instruction with assignments and due dates and projects and handouts and things of, of a similar nature, web links, resources, and so on. And that comes under this realm of being compliant, using the proper app, et cetera,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would think as a parent who may or may not be working 1 or 2 or 3 jobs and may or may not have 1 or 2 or 5 or who knows how many kids, and maybe I'm raising grandchildren, cut to the chase. What can I do to help? Period. What can I do to help? So, you know what? If you say to me, here's a suggested activity, with your child to augment what we're doing, or here's a question you could ask your child about what's going on with their lesson, their lessons, something like that. And of course that's going to change as the child ages, right? Because maybe you want to give a lot of support to your pre-K student. Maybe you feel like by the time your kid's a sophomore in high school, they need to be starting to tie their own shoes. I don't know.
No.
That's how I was raised. That's how I know.
Hey, Judy, there is one of the teachers has a hand up. I don't know if she has a question or not, but maybe I could unmic her.
Sure.
Sheila, yes.
Yeah, Sheila, you are so, I'm going to click on yours, and then you can click on, if you have a microphone and if you have a question, you can click on your microphone to unmute yourself.
Or type your question in the question box or the chat channel as well.
Yeah. And oh, one other thing, Judy, you've been, you know, these are some really good things to put on teacher websites. When you were discussing this material with Roger and me in whenever it was, January or February, there were several documents that you shared with us that had some very good information, some really, you know, simple things that we should know and follow. Are those still available for teachers who need them, or have they been updated?
I will make them so.
Yeah, so how should the teachers, Jen, if they wish those documents, just send you an email, or?
You know what? That would be great. And if there are specific questions or things, please send them to me, and maybe I can create something and put it under the public relations section of the website so that it's there. It's, you know, anybody can kind of get some basic documents and some basic information anytime. But please feel free to call.
And we have our follow-up survey from the webinar that's sent out every week with an area for teachers to respond with questions and comments. But in this case, I'm sure there are going to be some questions that we will be able to pass on to you as well, and maybe use those questions to tailor a response that more people would like.
Yeah. Did I have a question there or no?
I do not know. It has not come through. You know, I noticed we have about 8 minutes left, and you had mentioned at the beginning something about pictures and other information. You might want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. So I have two other quick things that I really, one I just want to share, and the other I'm hoping for maybe some feedback now or in the future about. I'm gonna find the slide. Okay, photos. So a lot of people send me pictures, and I appreciate that very much, because you know what? I can't be everywhere, and trust me when I tell you, I have more fun going out to the schools and taking pictures than probably anything else that I do. I would love to be at every single one of your events, but sadly, I have all this other work to do, so I can't always be there. So I really appreciate it, especially now. It's coming up on the end of the year. I'm going to start putting together a district calendar, and when I do that, I'm always trolling for pictures. So here's the thing, though. For me to put a picture on a website or online, you can send me any old thing, really. Any old thing you took with your phone or your Brownie camera, it doesn't matter. I can use it. But for print, especially now that we've gone to the Buffalo News, hopefully you have all noticed how snazzy and slick your newsletter is these days. That's because the Buffalo News prints it on really nice paper, and we've made a little bit of an investment in that. I need those pictures to be a certain size. Now the resolution I can play with, but the size I really can't. So we all studied pointillism, right, in our liberal arts education, and I think it was Surratt or somebody. Who was it? Who wasn't Surratt? I can't remember his name, but the pointillism guy, where the picture's made up of all those points, right?
Yeah.
Those. Speaking of the death of Surratt, maybe I'm just in a bad mood. I don't know. But whoever that guy is with all the points, right? That's what your images are made up of. Tiny, tiny, tiny dots. If you don't have enough dots, basically, in your picture, the Buffalo News can't produce a high resolution, nice, sharp, crisp photo. I can't use a small picture. So this is the math involved in it, and it might give you a headache at this time of day and this time of the week. To print a 4x6 image at 300 pixels per inch or dots per inch, whichever, it's the same thing. I need a file that's at least, right, what does this mean? 4 by 300, being 1200 pixels. All of a sudden, I'm doing algebra here for you. Along its short side and 6x3. Basically, I need a big picture. Your surest bet is to use an honest-to-God camera, something that takes a photo that is a big size, because I can shrink that, I can blow it up, I can tone it, and it's still going to look nice. If you send me something from your phone, it may or may not be big enough. And if it's not big enough, I can't use it, because if I use it, it's not going to reproduce well, and it's not going to look well. So I can encourage you to check your camera, your phone camera, and see what size it's actually taking photos at. I can't tell everybody how to do that with their particular phone. So
what's that number again? The minimum?
1200 by 1800 pixels.
Okay.
You want a 300 dots per inch. Usually,
per inch,
most cameras, many cameras do the 200. So you have to be careful.
And even
there.
that's okay. I mean, I can work with 230, but I definitely need the number of pixels to be there. And before we go, I see we have 3 minutes left, and I'm sure people want to jump in bed and run to work in the morning, just like I do. I am seeking feedback, please, on Peachjar. We adopted Peachjar this year to try to keep paper out of the schools and to try to keep people's flyers from being, if anybody, and I pray that you all have downloaded the district app, the top 2/3 of that app scroll the last 5 images that have been posted either online, on Facebook, Twitter, or the web. So if I'm posting flyers from the Boys Club or the Girl Scouts or whomever, that means that flyer is the top 2/3 of our app for 8 seconds. I want to help all these people, but I don't want to give them that kind of real estate. You might not, it might be the only image you see. I want that image to be a positive image of our school district, not a promotion for another worthy organization. But we've also had a lot of people in the community that are not delighted by this, because Peachjar can charge those organizations under some circumstances. So I've been asked by the superintendent for a recommendation. Do we keep Peachjar or do we go back to paper in the schools? And since I'm not in a school, I'd appreciate feedback from people who are.
Great. I'm sure that doesn't Peachjar or the district some way collect some analytics on that?
Well, the problem isn't so much. Here's the thing. We have people, and I don't want to identify organizations, but we have organizations who are not happy that if their event that they're promoting is free, then they can promote it for free. And people can see it, and it lives on everybody's website. The flyers for Maple, the flyers for Man, the flyers for Gaskell. But if their organization in any way charges, in any way, then they get charged. So if you're selling pizza, you get charged. If you're Boy Scouts and you have a fee to join, you get charged. The only way around that is if you are a school, a PEG, or the district itself. So the pushback is more from the organizations, I would say.
I see.
But
well,
we also want to make
it's information that's needed, obviously.
Right, sure. And I'm all happy to help people promote these. You know, many of them are very worthwhile organizations working with the same people we are. So, of course, we want to help them. But the alternative, it seems to me, is going back to the paper in the schools. So I don't want to make that decision when no paper is going to come across my desk. You know, I don't want to make that recommendation and without feedback from the schools.
Sure. Great.
Okay. And with that, we've reached the magic hour of 9 o'clock. Want to thank Judy for joining us tonight. And again, if anybody has any questions, please send an email or on the survey, you will be getting in 1 hour a thank you email for attending. Please open up the thank you email because inside there is a link to the survey, and we do want to get your feedback on that. And with that, I think, Raj, we have reached the end of the webinar system for the year, have we not?
Quite possibly. Most likely.
Yeah,
yes.
There may be a chance, and we will be emailing it out if there are others, and so keep an eye on your emails, and if there are others, we'll be doing that. And if not, it's been fun. I hope you've enjoyed it, gotten a little bit out of it, and pretty soon the summer calendar will be come out from the Teacher Resource Center, and we hope you'll consider taking some of those classes and groups and come in and see us and maybe enhance your technology a little bit. Raj, any last saying?
I think you said it well. There you are.
That's a first. and Judy, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, and with that, we'll say good night, and I will close the webinar, and have a good week, everybody.
Yes, and a great summer break if we don't see you till next fall.
Good night.